Hi everybody, my name is Kidia, and today we're going to be doing a new player or beginner's guide to the Underrot. I've been running a lot of low level keys recently because I recently leveled a brand new shaman for some content on this channel, and I was trying to gear it up. And I discovered that low keys are actually, in a way, more difficult than higher keys because a lot of people just don't know the mechanics. So I thought I'd do my small part and make a little guide that might help a couple different people out and have some fun making some content too. I took some footage from a 6 Underrot I ran with my shaman, and we'll be going over key abilities and key mobs to keep in mind, and I hope you enjoy it. See you there. Okay, first we're going to talk about the ads you're going to encounter as you make your way to the first boss. The first ad to keep in mind is the Chosen Blood Matron. The Chosen Blood Matron will charge the player furthest away from her and do a slow cleave ability. Getting hit by that puts a nasty bleed on you that will most likely kill you if you don't have an immunity. Move out of the way when she charges you so you don't get hit. The next thing you're going to have to deal with are the Fetid Maggots. Fetid Maggots will occasionally do a frontal projectile spew vomit thing that does massive damage and can easily kill you. This can't be interrupted normally, but it can be stunned while it's casting or interrupted by a knockback such as Typhoon or the engineering item. If you don't have either of these options or in a group that isn't super coordinated, like if you're in a pug for instance, move out of the way when the animation starts to go off. It'll look like this. It's a little green ball being charged up near its mouth. The Blood Priest that you encounter is going to be the last one we're really going to take a look at here. That will cast Gift of Gahoon. Gift of Gahoon needs to be interrupted before anything else. It will make a mob unkillable, so when the mob dies it just stays there casting its abilities and can't be damaged. That buff can be purged if you miss the interrupt, but very few classes have a purge available. The first boss we're going to look at is Elder Leexa. This boss is really important that you use your Bloodlust on. She has a few abilities. First one is Blood Bolt. Make sure you interrupt that as often as possible in a well-coordinated group. Set up an interrupt rotation. She probably won't ever get a single cast off. If this does go off, it does a massive amount of damage and puts a healing absorb on whoever gets hit, so they have to be healed up even more than they normally would be. This can one-shot somebody on a high level of Tyrannical. She occasionally does a Sanguine Feast, which is a red circle that'll appear underneath her after she teleports. Don't stand in the circle, you'll take a lot of damage. And then she also does Creeping Rod. This is a green circle that she casts in front of her, and then after a few seconds it'll slowly move away from her. Getting hit by that's also going to do a massive amount of damage. And then the other mechanic of this fight is that she periodically summons a mirror image of herself that will cast all the same abilities as her own self, just with significantly less health. Leave that ad down so you don't get overrun and you beat this boss easily. Now we're going to talk about a couple of the important trash mobs on your way to the second boss. The first thing is going to be the Diseased Lashers. These are little flower guys and they will randomly stun a person if they get off at one of their cast. It'll be a disease and they have to either be healed up past a certain amount or dispelled, but not every class has a healer dispel that can do disease, so keep that in mind. Focus that interrupt first. The next one will be Feral Blood Swarmers. Feral Blood Swarmers will focus a random person and then pursue them, focusing on them. So try and keep them CC'd when they're doing this. They will not be tauntable, and they can absolutely do a serious amount of damage, especially on Fortified. They also occasionally do an AoE silence that you might want to interrupt. And then there are 3 more maggots in this room. You'll deal with them just like you did on the previous one. The next boss we're going to take a look at is Kragmati Infested. You absolutely need to use Bloodlust on this boss. Because of how quickly it comes up after the first boss, you may want to clear more trash on your way to the third boss and then come back so that you have lust available if you've been timing it out well. You want to split the room sort of into quadrants and have everyone spread out while taking the boss in the middle. A lot of people like to do it up against the wall to make his charge easier to deal with, but I find that this makes the rampage harder to deal with in the intermission phases. I don't think the trade-off's worth it. The boss will periodically spew larvae on the tank. It does a massive amount of damage, and then it puts little maggots on the ground, larvae on the ground that you need to run over and squish. That's the main mechanic of this fight. Squish all of them, or they'll hatch into ticks shortly after. He will also charge a player at random. If he hits you, it does massive damage. Also puts more larvae on the ground that you need to stop. Move out of the way of that if he turns towards you. He has a slowly moving energy bar at 100 energy. He will do a massive AoE damage called Tantrum. That's going to spread larvae all over the room, which is why you pre-spread. Everybody gets the larvae around in your area. This is a really good time to use personal CDs and health potions, as your healers are going to be doing a lot. There's a massive amount of damage going on here. The fight repeats as is at that point. You want to save less because the damage on this boss is insane, and keep it up and you'll win. And now we're going to take a look at the trash on the way to the third boss. This boss is significantly easier than the other ones. The first thing is you're going to see some death speakers and a bunch of skeletons. The skeletons have a AoE shield on them. If you can purge that, great. If not, you just have to DPS through it. Make sure you interrupt the death speaker when they cast Raise Dead so you don't have more ads to deal with. There's a bunch of worms in there. Those are the grotesque horrors. They spam cast Death Bolt, which does ticking damage to the entire party if it gets off. That needs to be interrupted. They can be stunned. And then finally, you have Defilers, which will cast a Withering Curse, which is going to reduce the health and increase damage taken of everybody in the party. Make sure that gets dispelled because they also cast Shadow Bolt Volley, which will absolutely annihilate you if you have a couple stacks of Withering Curse. If they drop a totem, you need to move about 20 yards out of the way because it goes off quick and there's hardly enough time to kill it. It will kill you if you get caught by it. The third boss in Underrot is Spore Cholera. This boss will spawn little green mushrooms around the stone circle he starts on. The tank needs to move him to the edge of the circle and have him face the mushrooms. He's going to cast a frontal cleave called Shockwave, and it will break all the mushrooms behind the tank in front of the boss. You don't want to get hit by Shockwave if you're the healer or the DPS. It does bad things to you. 2 DPS are occasionally going to be targeted with Upheaval. Upheaval, they need to run to a spot with mushrooms around it because when it goes off, it will break all the mushrooms in the little circle. Try not to run to the spots that the tank is about to cleave or where the other DPS is. He also occasionally radiates spores out from these 4 red mushrooms that spawn. Getting hit by that will put a disease with a ticking dot on you. You gotta dance around a little bit. This boss also has an energy meter. Once he hits 100 energy, he will do an AoE damage pulse and then pop any of the mushrooms, applying a dot on each player for each one that's left up. And he's also going to send more of those spores that you have to dodge around. This is an intense healing moment, so dodge them and make sure you have all the mushrooms down. If you're unable to get all the mushrooms and you're a class with an immunity like a paladin with bubble, hunter with turtle, or a rogue with cloak of shadows, try and run and get any of them that are still up before this cast goes off. The trash between the third and the fourth boss is identical to the trash between the second and the third. There's only one new ad that you'll have to deal with, and that's the Faceless Corruptor. You can't miss him. He's a big faceless dude. He occasionally spawns tentacles that'll pop up out of the ground near players, and after a couple seconds they'll slam down doing damage. So if you see those purple tentacles bite you, move out of the way. And then he casts Maddening Gaze occasionally, which is a large frontal AoE that'll shoot off like 50 yards. If he bends down to the ground, you see him casting Maddening Gaze in your direction, move out of the way or you could die. And finally, the last boss of Underrot is Unbound Abomination. This is an incredible simple boss, and yet it's one that I constantly see people failing to do correctly. And even in the run that I recorded to get footage of this, we didn't do it perfectly. Everyone needs to stack nice and tight on the tank, and the tank should ideally position the boss close to the outside of the circle but facing the wall. Periodically, the boss is going to cast a Vile Explosion, and halfway through that cast, you're going to want to sidestep him to the right, so that when the cast goes off, it's going to target your locations. It'll put Corruption where you were, not where you're going to be, and then you can slowly inch the boss around the room in a circle, clockwise or counterclockwise to your preference, and you'll keep the area clean. You have a Titan Keeper in this fight that is helping you, and he will occasionally cast a golden circle animation on one of the party members. That will also remove the corruption on the ground, and so I see a lot of people making the mistake that they think that's what they're supposed to do, use that to create space, but actually you're getting a stacking debuff on you, and that will not only clear the ground, but it will actually cure everybody inside of it. So if you stay nice and tight with the tank, that'll go off and everybody will be dispelled at a semi-constant interval throughout the fight, and it'll make your healers' lives a lot easier. You shouldn't have to worry about the space as you move around the circle slowly. This boss does not take damage normally. Every time you hit him, you give him blood energy. Energy is a constant theme in this encounter, in this dungeon. At 100 energy, two ads will spawn, and they'll run towards and start doing damage. Killing the ads does damage to the boss. You do this 3 times, and then you win. So 6 total ads. A lot of people make the mistake and they switch to the ads because that's how you do the boss. Damage the boss, but your Titan Keeper friend that's giving you the gold circles will actually kill them for you pretty quickly, so it was far more efficient to stay DPSing the boss. When the third wave comes out, you can switch to the ads if you want to, but you're only going to save a couple seconds. At that point, just make sure you stay alive and you've won. I really hope you enjoyed this guide. If you found it helpful, please let me know. If you didn't, also let me know. And hope to see some feedback in the comments. Have a great day. Bye.